Okay, this is going to be our last video in our snowflake series to make our snowflake. So we've got a pretty awesome snowflake going here. But what we want to do now is we want to just create a pattern. So we've got our snowflake, kind of our arm arrays there, and we can change our variables to make different things happen here. But what we need to do now is create our pattern and then turn this in. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new object. So we're going to go over to our purple here. We're going to create a new object. And this is going to be the pattern for our snowflake. So we'll call this pattern. So we're going to rename this object pattern. Okay, and so this is going to be this is going to make our snowflake awesome. So what we're going to do is instead of doing the repeat and however many times we're going to repeat, we're going to count. Okay, and so what the count is going to do is it's going to run this code a number of times. So we're going to start at 0. So one of the things that's unique about coding is 0 is always the first one. So the numbering system is off by a little bit. So when you count, we always start with 0. And we're going to count from 0, and we're going to do our array numbers. So we're going to go by our data here, and we're going to go count to our array number. So however many arrays we decide we want to put up here. So right here, I've got my array number 6. So we're going to count so what this is going to say is we're going to count from 0 to 6 by 1. And it's going to do what we're going to do. So now we're going to create our pattern. So we've created our object. So we created our center object, created our chevron object, we created our array object. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create our pattern by just adding copies of those. So now what we're going to do, this is where it gets really fun, is we're going to add a copy of our array object, add a copy of our array object. So we're going to go in here, we're going to add a copy of our array object. I'm going to make this in that white color there. So we're going to add a copy of our array object. And what we want to do is we're going to rotate around. So we're going to move it a little bit, because if we just keep adding our copies, one right on top of the other, they're going to add directly on top of each other. So we're going to rotate this on our z-axis, right? And we're going to rotate it let's do it by our count. Yes. So what we're going to do is on our array object. So what we're going to do here is get into our math. So what we're going to do is we'll do our math here, and we're going to do that same thing. We're going to put the math inside the math to get the 3. So we're going to do our 3. So we're going to count by our data. So we're going to do the number of our count times. So we'll do here times. We're going to do 360, which is going to be the 360 degrees. And then we're going to divide that by our array number. All right, so we'll do that divided by our array number. So we're taking the count number that we're at. We're going to multiply that by 360. We're divide that by our array number. And we're going to move, that is going to be our rotated around our, there it is, degrees from pivot, right? And what we'll do here is we'll just drop that in here, our pivot XYZ 0. There it is. So we're going to degrees from our pivot. And so we've got that. Then what we're going to do is add a copy of an object underneath it. So we're creating our arrays. So now we're going to add a copy of our center object. Add a copy of our center object. And we're going to keep this to be a center solid piece. We're going to create a group. Make this our solid center group. Then we're going to delete our array object. So we're going to come in here, delete our array object, and then we're going to delete our center object. Where's our center object? Delete our center object. Delete our object center. All right. And so now when we run this, I'm going to turn this speed up just a little bit so you guys can see what's going on here. We're going to run this at full speed. It's going to create the arms of the array of ours. We're adding, see how we're adding in those patterns to make it? There's my snowflake, right? So now I've got and created my unique snowflake. Now, if I go back up here, so what? Check this out. So if I go back up here, I'm going to change this to 27. We'll change this to 9. Change this to 4. Change that to 13. And let's try to run this again. I'm going to get a very different pattern for my snowflake, right? And so I've got very different things for whatever it is that I'm creating with this snowflake. So what we're going to do now is when we get this done, I'm going to go back and I'm going to put this back in. I'm going to make my array number here. Actually, what I would want to do is I'd have to go back in and change my distance to 13 again to make that fit. So I'm going to go back in and change that distance to 13. So now what that's going to do is it'll make it so that everything is connected, right? So if you do change that distance, you're going to have to go back in and we'll change that one, and that will get us, see how it's creating so that everything is connected and touching when we have got our snowflake. And there we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the way that it was for me. So I'm going to put that back to set my distance to 10. And I'm going to go back in here to this, and I'm going to put these back to the way they were to show you guys how to turn this in. So I'm going to do that to 6, do that to 35, change that back to, I think it was 3 that I had it at. And then I've got 10 for my distance. Okay, so now what we're going to do is you're going to share this with me to turn this in. So the way that we're going to do this is you're going to hit the share button, and this is going to share it as an animated GIF. And so what we're going to do on here, we're going to click it as an animated GIF. And this is going to, if I can tilt and zoom to get it to where I want. All right. And there's my animated GIF. So then what I would do with this one is, so this is my animated GIF, and I've got it here. So I've got it where I want it to be. I'm going to copy this. This is going to be where my copy is. So I'm going to copy that link, and I'm going to, there it is. So there's my GIF. It's turning it in. Once this is finished, downloads the file to your Chromebook, and then you will attach that file to your assignment and turn it in. So once you get that done, you're all set.